You've got to face it to fix it. My brother's life will bring you moments where silence becomes your loudest teacher. When you step into that no contact zone, it's not just about shutting the door, it's about the transformation that happens inside you. Let me walk you through the 9 stages a man goes through during no contact. And remember, each stage isn't just something you endure, it's something you learn from. The first stage of no contact hits like a freight train. It's that moment when the reality of what's happening hasn't fully sunk in, and your mind struggles to make sense of it. You might find yourself waking up and instinctively reaching for your phone, expecting a message, a call, or even just the presence of that person. But it's not there, and that absence feels jarring, almost unreal. You tell yourself this can't be happening. It's as though your mind is building a protective wall, trying to shield you from the weight of the situation. Denial becomes a coping mechanism, a way to avoid confronting the pain head on. You might find yourself running through endless scenarios in your head. Maybe this is temporary, you think. They'll reach out soon. They always do. Your brain clings to memories of better times, replaying moments when things felt good, almost perfect. You convince yourself that this silence is just a blip, a misunderstanding that will resolve itself with time. But as the hours turn into days, that hope starts to feel like quicksand, pulling you deeper into confusion. There's a part of you that refuses to let go. You might still check their social media, trying to find clues or hints that everything is fine. You're searching for signs that this distance isn't permanent. But those signs rarely come, and instead you're met with a void. That void feels like rejection, and rejection has a way of hitting a man in his core. It challenges your sense of self, your worth, and your confidence. Yet in denial, you push those feelings aside, focusing instead on the possibility that this is all just a mistake. Denial isn't just about clinging to hope, it's about avoiding pain. You don't want to admit to yourself that something significant has changed. The routine you had, the connection you shared, the bond you thought was unbreakable, it's now fractured. And acknowledging that means stepping into a level of vulnerability that most men aren't ready to face. So you distract yourself. You might throw yourself into work, overcommit to the gym, or surround yourself with noise just to drown out the silence. But no matter how busy you make yourself, the reality lingers in the background, waiting for you to confront it. This stage is also filled with a lot of questions. What went wrong? What could I have done differently? Why did this happen to me? You might even question your own perception, wondering if you misread the signs or ignored the cracks in the foundation. This questioning can be relentless, but it's also a way to delay acceptance. If you're focused on the why, you don't have to deal with the what now. In the midst of denial, it's easy to forget that this stage is a natural part of the process. The mind tries to protect the heart, creating a barrier against the full impact of loss. It's not about weakness, it's about survival. Denial gives you time to adjust, even if it feels like you're running in circles. But eventually, the wall starts to crumble, and that's when the real work begins. The next stage after denial is when the floodgates of anger burst open. This anger isn't subtle, it doesn't whisper, it roars. It's raw, consuming, and demanding to be felt. You might wake up one morning, and instead of feeling numb or confused, you feel a fire in your chest. It starts small, like an ember, but it grows quickly. Suddenly, every memory, every word, and every action from the past seems like fuel for the flames. Why did they do this? How could they treat me this way? Those questions don't come from a place of seeking understanding, they come from a place of pain demanding justice. You might direct your anger outward, blaming the person who walked away or shut the door. Their words and actions replay in your mind, but this time you're not looking at them through the lens of sadness, you're scrutinizing them. You think about every moment you felt disrespected, every time you compromised, and every time you ignored your instincts for the sake of the relationship. The anger says, how dare they treat me like this after everything I've done? That sense of betrayal cuts deep, and the anger grows louder, feeding on it. Sometimes, though, the anger turns inward. That's when it gets tricky. You start blaming yourself. Why didn't I see this coming? Why wasn't I better? You pick apart your own actions, dissecting every decision, every word, and every mistake. This kind of anger feels more like self-punishment than release, and it can spiral into frustration and shame. It's as if you're fighting a battle on two fronts, one against them and one against yourself. But no matter where the anger is directed, it feels like it's always bubbling just beneath the surface, ready to erupt at any moment. During this stage, it's common to lash out. Maybe not directly at the person, but at the world around you. The smallest inconveniences can feel like personal attacks. A traffic jam, a rude comment, or a missed deadline might set you off, not because they're significant, but because they act as triggers for the emotions you've been holding in. It's not just anger, it's frustration, hurt, and a sense of powerlessness masquerading as rage. You might even find yourself venting to friends or family, going over the same stories, the same grievances, hoping for validation, or maybe just a way to make sense of it all. Anger can also be deceptive. It feels powerful. It feels like action, like you're finally doing something after all the passive emotions of denial. But anger isn't the solution, it's part of the process. It's a necessary release, a way for your body and mind to process the hurt, but if you're not careful, it can become a prison. You might find yourself consumed by it, replaying arguments and creating scenarios in your mind where you win or get the last word. But those victories are hollow because they don't bring peace. Still, anger serves its purpose. It forces you to confront what you've been avoiding. It gives you energy where there was once despair. It makes you feel alive, even when the pain threatens to overwhelm you. But like a fire, it can't burn forever. Eventually, it will start to cool, leaving behind ashes. And in those ashes, something new can begin to grow. Bargaining is one of the most complex stages a man encounters during no contact. It's not as fiery as anger or as overwhelming as sadness, but it's deeply insidious. It's a mental game you play with yourself, a constant negotiation between hope and reality. It begins with the overwhelming need to fix things, to find a way to bridge the gap that no contact has created. You start by questioning everything. What if I had done things differently? What if I had said the right words at the right time? What if I reach out now? Will that change everything? The mind becomes a battlefield filled with hypothetical scenarios where things could go differently. You play out imaginary conversations in your head, crafting perfect responses, imagining the other person hearing them, and finally understanding your side. These fantasies feel so real that for a moment they bring a sense of relief. But reality has a way of snapping back. And when it does, the weight of the situation feels even heavier. Still, you don't let go. Bargaining isn't about accepting what is, it's about desperately trying to hold on to what was or what could have been. You might find yourself making small efforts to test the waters. Maybe you consider sending a casual text, something nonchalant that doesn't give away how much you're struggling. Hey, just thinking about you. Hope you're doing okay. It's not really about their well-being. It's about gauging their response, hoping for a sign that the door isn't completely shut. But even if you don't act on it, the urge to reach out lingers. It's like a tug of war inside you, one side saying to move on, the other clinging to the past with all its might. This stage isn't limited to just external actions, it's also internal promises. You start making deals with yourself, as if your own determination could rewrite the past or reshape the future. If I just give it some time, they'll come around. If I improve myself, hit the gym, focus on my career, they'll notice and regret letting me go. If I pray harder or manifest more, maybe the universe will bring them back to me. These thoughts feel productive, but they're often just another way to avoid facing the deeper truth that the relationship as it was might truly be over. Bargaining can also take the form of overanalyzing. You dissect every word they said, every action they took, looking for hidden meanings or signs that things could still be salvaged. Maybe they didn't mean it when they said it was over. Maybe they're waiting for me to make the first move. This kind of thinking keeps you trapped in a loop, endlessly replaying the past instead of stepping into the future. You cling to the idea that if you can just figure out the right angle, the right approach, you can change the outcome. Another layer of bargaining is externalizing your search for answers. You might start seeking advice from friends, reading articles, or watching videos about relationships and no contact. You're not just looking for guidance, you're looking for validation, for someone to tell you that there's still hope, that your efforts aren't in vain. But the advice you receive can be conflicting, which only adds to the confusion. Some people will tell you to move on, while others will suggest strategies to win them back. And in the midst of this, you find yourself stuck, unable to fully commit to either path. One of the most difficult aspects of bargaining is how it plays with your sense of time. You begin to measure every day, every week, as if it's part of a countdown to something. It's been a month, surely they're thinking about me by now. Maybe I'll hear from them on their birthday, or maybe they're waiting for a sign from me. These thoughts keep you tethered to the past, unable to fully embrace the present or plan for the future. You live in a state of anticipation, constantly waiting for something that may never come. What makes bargaining so challenging is that it gives you a false sense of control. It tricks you into believing that your actions, your thoughts, or your plans can influence the other person's feelings or decisions. But relationships aren't equations where effort equals outcome. People are complicated, and sometimes, no matter what you do, the outcome won't change. Accepting that truth is hard, especially when you're still emotionally invested. Bargaining, in many ways, is a way to delay that acceptance. It's an attempt to rewrite the story in your head, to find a happy ending that feels just out of reach. Bargaining is about hope. It's the part of you that isn't ready to let go, that still believes there's a chance to make things right. And hope, in itself, isn't a bad thing. It can be a powerful motivator. But in this context, it often becomes a double-edged sword, keeping you stuck in a cycle of longing and regret. You keep reaching out, not always physically, but emotionally trying to pull the past into the present. And every time you come up empty-handed, the disappointment cuts deeper. Even as you move through this stage, there's a part of you that knows the truth. You might not want to admit it, but deep down you recognize that no amount of bargaining can change what's already happened. That realization is painful, but it's also the beginning of something important. It's the first step toward letting go of the illusions you've been holding on to and stepping into the reality of what's ahead. Until then, the tug of war continues, pulling you back and forth between hope and acceptance. As the days without contact stretch on, the anger begins to fade, and what's left is an overwhelming sense of sadness. This sadness is different from the initial shock. It's deeper, more pervasive. It's not just a feeling, it's an emptiness that fills every part of you. The world seems dimmer, quieter, and every little thing reminds you of the person who's no longer there. It's a crushing weight that presses down on your chest, leaving you feeling like you're walking through a fog that you can't escape. The simple joys of life don't seem to matter much anymore because your mind is consumed with what's missing, not what's present. You might find yourself replaying old conversations, looking at pictures or gifts they gave you, or just sitting in silence, lost in thoughts about what could have been. It's as though the memories are both a comfort and a torment. They remind you of how good things once were, how easy it was to share your life with someone else. But with every memory, the sadness grows. You realize that those moments are in the past, and no matter how much you long for them, they can never return. It's the cruel irony of loss. The more you wish for what's gone, the more it hurts. Alongside sadness, loneliness creeps in. It's not just the absence of the other person physically, it's the feeling that no one can truly fill the space they once occupied. You may have friends, family, or colleagues around you, but it doesn't matter. None of them can replace the connection you shared with that person. The loneliness becomes even more isolating because it's something that no one else can fully understand. You might try to talk about it, but it feels like no one truly gets the depth of the pain you're in. It's the kind of loneliness that cuts deep, one that isolates you even when you're surrounded by others. The silence of no contact amplifies this loneliness, making you feel even more disconnected from the world around you. You begin to question your own self-worth, wondering if maybe this is the price you have to pay for the mistakes you made or the things you missed. You might even find yourself doubting your ability to love or be loved again, feeling like you've lost a part of yourself that you may never get back. Sadness and loneliness aren't just emotions, they're forces that can drain your energy and willpower, making it hard to get out of bed or face the day. Every task feels like a mountain to climb, every interaction feels shallow, and every moment spent alone feels like an eternity. The quiet can be deafening, and all the things you used to enjoy no longer seem to matter. The worst part is that there's no clear way out. The pain feels endless, as if it will never ease. But somewhere in that sadness and loneliness, there's the potential for growth, even if it's hard to see through the fog. The bargaining stage is where your mind starts working overtime, constantly seeking solutions, alternatives, and loopholes. It's as if a part of you refuses to accept the reality of the situation and clings to the possibility that things could still work out. You begin to question everything, looking for ways to undo the damage. You find yourself crafting scenarios in your head, replaying moments when things could have been different. You might ask, what if I had acted differently? Or what if I had said the right thing at the right time? There's this hope, almost a desperation, to turn back the clock and somehow fix what's broken. Bargaining is a mental game of compromise. You start negotiating with yourself, thinking that if you do this or that, maybe the other person will come back. It's like creating a list of conditions. If I change this part of myself, maybe they'll realize I'm worth it. If I show them how much I've grown, they'll see that things could be different. You start making promises to yourself, vowing to be better, to change the things that might have driven them away in the first place. You think that if you can become the person they want or need, maybe they'll reconsider. You begin to believe that all it takes is one small gesture to win them back. But it's not just about changing yourself. You begin to justify actions or decisions, hoping that in doing so, you'll find a way to reopen the door that's been closed. You might consider reaching out, sending a message, a text, anything that might spark a response. You tell yourself it's harmless. It's just a simple hello. Maybe it'll lead to something more. You might even tell yourself that this is the final attempt, the one last thing you can do before you move on completely. But even as you plan it out, you know deep down that it's a gamble. You're betting on something you have no control over, and yet you can't seem to stop yourself from playing that hand. What's even more challenging is the back and forth that comes with bargaining. One moment you'll be certain that reaching out is the right thing to do, that it's the only chance you have to salvage the connection. The next moment, doubt creeps in. You second guess yourself. What if they don't respond? What if I make things worse? This push and pull between hope and fear becomes exhausting. The mind goes into overdrive, constantly weighing the pros and cons, looking for any possible way to influence the outcome. Sometimes bargaining takes a more internal form. You try to bargain with the universe or fate, telling yourself that if you make one more change in your life, if you achieve that goal, lose that weight, become the person you believe you should be, then the relationship will return. It's like trying to perform a magic trick where all the elements align, and the person will come back because you've earned it somehow. You hope that the universe will reward your effort, that by doing enough, you'll be given another chance. In the quiet moments when no one else is around, you know the truth. No matter how much you try to bargain, the reality of the situation remains. The relationship isn't something that can be fixed by changing who you are or by manipulating circumstances. Still, bargaining holds its grip. It gives you something to hold on to, a false sense of control in a situation that's far beyond your reach. You keep bargaining because deep down, you believe that if you just push a little harder, if you try a little more, things can still work out. But bargaining is more than just a mental exercise, it's an emotional response. It's a way of coping with the helplessness you feel. It allows you to hold on to hope, even when the odds seem stacked against you. The mind wants to believe that there's a way to reverse the damage, to rewrite the narrative. Yet, as you continue down this path, the truth becomes harder and harder to ignore. The reality is that you're trying to control something that's already beyond your grasp. Bargaining is an attempt to regain some sense of power in a situation that has left you powerless. And as painful as it is, that realization is part of the healing process. As the noise of confusion begins to fade, you enter a phase where clarity starts to emerge. It's like a fog lifting from your mind, and for the first time in a long while, you begin to see things more clearly. The pain is still there, but the overwhelming sense of uncertainty starts to subside. In this stage, your thoughts become more focused, and you begin to understand the situation with a new perspective. You start to reflect not just on the relationship, but on your own actions, your growth, and the things that you may have missed along the way. It might feel unsettling, as if the clarity forces you to confront uncomfortable truths that you've been avoiding. You realize that while you were consumed with the idea of reconciliation, you didn't take the time to understand the full picture. There's a shift from seeing things through the lens of emotion to viewing them through the lens of reason. The heart that was once clouded with hope and longing now starts to settle into a space where logic and understanding take precedence. This is the moment when you begin to see things for what they truly are, not what you wanted them to be. It's like looking at a photo that you've stared at for so long that you've missed the finer details. Now, you're able to pick up on things you didn't notice before, the signs, the missteps, the things that were left unsaid. You start to understand the role you played in the situation, acknowledging your own mistakes and shortcomings. It's a humbling process, but one that ultimately leads to growth. You begin to realize that the end of the relationship wasn't just about what the other person did or didn't do, it was about how both of you contributed to where things went wrong. You also start to recognize the lessons hidden in the pain. In the beginning, all you could see was the loss, the emptiness, the regret. But with clarity, you start to realize that this period of no contact has given you the space to reconnect with yourself. You've learned things about your own emotional needs, your boundaries, and what truly matters to you. In many ways, this phase allows you to understand what you truly want moving forward, both in relationships and in life in general. The clarity doesn't necessarily make everything better, but it gives you the insight to make better choices moving forward. The clarity phase also involves accepting that some questions may never have answers. You may never fully understand why things ended the way they did or why certain events unfolded as they did. But now, you're okay with not having all the answers. You begin to accept that some things are simply beyond your control. What you can control, however, is your own healing and your own growth. You begin to see that the pain you felt wasn't without purpose, it was a catalyst for change, pushing you toward a place where you can be better, stronger, and more aware of what you need from others. This is also the moment where the realization sets in that you're no longer bound to the past. The clarity allows you to see the relationship for what it was, something that was beautiful in its time, but ultimately something that no longer serves you. You stop longing for what's gone and start focusing on what's ahead. The clarity helps you understand that moving forward isn't about forgetting the past, but about integrating the lessons learned into your future. The fog has lifted, and now you stand in a space of greater awareness and understanding. You may still feel the scars of the journey, but you also feel a sense of empowerment that comes from having a clearer view of who you are and what you want. The clarity isn't about making everything perfect. It's about being honest with yourself and embracing the truth, however difficult it may be. As clarity sets in, it leads to the most powerful stage of all, empowerment. This is when you realize that the journey you've been on, with all its pain, confusion, and growth, has ultimately placed you in a position of strength. You begin to feel a shift in yourself, an internal strength that wasn't there before. It's as if you've come through a storm, and now you can see the light again. Empowerment comes not from the external world, but from within, from understanding that you have the power to shape your own future, regardless of what's happened in the past. You start to recognize your own resilience. The hardships you've endured, the loneliness, the sadness, the anger have not broken you. They've built you. Each challenge, each painful moment has been a stepping stone, forging a version of yourself that's more self-aware, more focused, and more determined than before. You realize that you are not defined by what's happened to you, but by how you rise from it. You've learned that you are capable of weathering storms, of standing strong, even when everything around you seems to be falling apart. With this newfound empowerment, there's a sense of ownership over your life. You stop looking for external validation or approval, and instead you begin to trust your own judgment. You no longer feel like a victim of circumstances. You're in control of your emotions, your decisions, and your destiny. You understand now that no one has the power to dictate your happiness, your worth, or your future except you. You've learned to put your own needs first and to prioritize your own well-being, something that may have been foreign to you before. Empowerment also means shedding the weight of guilt and regret. No longer do you carry the burden of wondering if things could have been different. You understand that some things are simply out of your control, and the power lies in how you move forward. Instead of fixating on past mistakes or missed opportunities, you shift your energy to the present moment. You begin to take ownership of your own growth and take responsibility for your choices, knowing that with every step you're building the life you deserve. Your perspective on relationships also changes. You begin to see them not as something you need to validate yourself or fulfill you, but as a space for mutual growth and respect. You no longer settle for less than you deserve. You understand that your worth is not dependent on the approval of others or the success of your relationships. Instead, you enter relationships as a whole person, already fulfilled, already content, and ready to share your life with someone who adds value, not someone who defines it. This empowerment fuels your confidence in every aspect of your life. Whether it's pursuing personal goals, advancing in your career, or tackling challenges head-on, you know that you have the ability to overcome whatever comes your way. The strength you've discovered within yourself is a driving force that propels you forward, reminding you that you are capable of achieving anything you set your mind to. No obstacle feels too big, no dream too far out of reach. You understand that you have the tools, the mindset, and the inner power to create the life you want. The beauty of empowerment is that it's not about becoming someone you're not. It's about embracing who you truly are. It's about trusting your instincts, honoring your values, and living authentically. This stage marks a turning point where you stop seeking approval or waiting for someone else to tell you that you're enough. You already know it. You have everything you need within you. Empowerment comes when you fully accept yourself, flaws and all, and step into your true potential with confidence and grace. As you move through the stages of healing and growth, acceptance becomes the final frontier, the place where true peace is found. It's the moment when you stop fighting against reality and instead embrace it as it is. You've walked through the fire of confusion, anger, sadness, and all the emotional chaos that comes with no contact. And now you reach a point where you let go of the need for answers, for closure, and for things to unfold the way you had hoped. This isn't resignation or giving up, rather. It's a deep sense of understanding and surrender to what is. Acceptance comes when you no longer feel the urge to change the past, to revisit old wounds, or to wonder what could have been. It's the moment when you realize that you have done everything you could, and now, the only thing left to do is move forward. You begin to understand that some things simply aren't meant to be, and it's not a reflection of your worth, but rather a part of the natural ebb and flow of life. The relationship, the situation, whatever it may have been, has served its purpose, and you now recognize that its chapter in your life has ended. It's not about erasing the pain or pretending it didn't matter. It's about finding peace in knowing that what happened for reasons beyond your control and understanding. This stage of acceptance is liberating because it frees you from the endless loop of questioning and second-guessing. You stop asking yourself, why didn't it work? Or what did I do wrong? Instead, you begin to embrace the fact that sometimes things fall apart, not because of something you did or didn't do, but simply because they were never meant to last. You stop looking for blame either in yourself or in others. You release the guilt, the shame, and the resentment that might have held you captive for so long. You accept that people change, that circumstances shift, and that you are allowed to outgrow certain situations and people without it diminishing your value. At this stage, you also begin to accept yourself more fully. You understand that you are not perfect, and that's okay. You've made mistakes, but those mistakes don't define you. You are a work in progress, constantly learning, evolving, and becoming better. Acceptance means forgiving yourself for the things you wish you could have done differently. It's the realization that while you can't change the past, you can shape your future. This self-compassion allows you to heal in ways that nothing else could. You let go of the harsh judgments you've placed on yourself and start treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you'd offer to a loved one. As you embrace acceptance, there's also a profound sense of freedom. The weight of expectations both from yourself and from others starts to lift. You are no longer bound by the need for things to go a certain way. You stop waiting for validation or approval. Instead, you find contentment in your own company and peace in knowing that you are whole on your own. You no longer feel incomplete or desperate for someone to fill a void within you. Acceptance brings a sense of inner peace that allows you to stand tall and confident, knowing that your worth is not contingent on any external source. Acceptance doesn't mean that everything is perfect or that you are immune to pain. It simply means that you've made peace with the past, accepted its lessons, and are ready to move forward without the weight of regret, anger, or resentment. You are ready to embrace the future with open arms, knowing that you are stronger, wiser, and more equipped to handle whatever comes next. In this space, there is no longer any need for anything to be different. You are at peace with the way things are, and in that peace, you find your true strength. Independence is a powerful transformation that emerges after you've navigated the emotional storms and turmoil that often come with the end of a relationship. It's not just about being physically alone, it's about cultivating the strength to stand on your own, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. In this phase, you begin to understand that you are your own anchor. The pain of the past no longer has the same grip on you, and you realize that you don't need another person to validate your worth or make you feel whole. You've learned to be self-sufficient, to rely on yourself, and to trust your own abilities to navigate the world. The first step toward independence is realizing that your happiness and well-being are entirely in your own hands. No longer do you seek constant reassurance or approval from others. You start to discover what truly brings you joy, peace, and fulfillment, regardless of outside circumstances or opinions. The process of finding your independence often involves disconnecting from toxic people, letting go of unhealthy attachments, and shifting your focus from external validation to inner fulfillment. You begin to ask yourself what truly makes you feel alive, what goals you want to pursue, and what life you want to create for yourself, unencumbered by the expectations of others. As your sense of independence grows, you start to regain control of your own emotions. Rather than letting your feelings be dictated by others or by the remnants of a past relationship, you learn to manage and process them on your own terms. You become aware of your emotional triggers and gain the tools to navigate them with grace. You realize that your happiness is not contingent on someone else's actions or behavior. Instead, it is up to you to decide how to respond to life's challenges. This emotional autonomy is empowering, as it frees you from being a victim of circumstances. You begin to live life on your own terms, without feeling like you need permission or approval from others to pursue your dreams or desires. Independence also means taking responsibility for your own growth. You no longer look to others for guidance or direction. Instead, you start to trust your own intuition and decision-making. The lessons from the past become stepping stones that propel you forward, and you realize that you are the architect of your future. You seek out opportunities for personal growth, whether through education, travel, or self-reflection. You understand that true independence comes from the ability to adapt, learn, and grow from your experiences, and you take full responsibility for your own development. This self-awareness makes you more resilient, as you know that no matter what challenges lie ahead, you have the strength to overcome them on your own. Along with emotional and mental independence, you also begin to discover the value of solitude. Rather than seeing being alone as loneliness or emptiness, you come to appreciate it as a space for reflection, rejuvenation, and self-discovery. Independence is about learning to enjoy your own company, to find contentment and peace within yourself. You begin to embrace the freedom of being able to do what you want when you want, without needing permission or approval from anyone. This is a time for you to focus on yourself, to nurture your dreams, and to redefine your identity. You no longer see solitude as something to fear or avoid, but as a necessary part of your journey towards self-empowerment. Independence is a journey of self-empowerment. It's about reclaiming your sense of self-worth and realizing that you are capable of achieving whatever you set your mind to. You stop waiting for someone else to make your life meaningful or give it direction. Instead, you take the reins and begin creating the life you want, guided by your own values and passions. Independence isn't about isolation, it's about self-reliance, self-respect, and the confidence to pursue life's opportunities without fear or hesitation. You become the person who no longer needs anyone else to complete you because you've already learned to complete yourself.